Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz Young, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Hello, welcome back to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we break down the skills, stories, and systems that help you thrive in today's digital world and beyond. Today's episode is something a little bit special. We're diving into the power of collaboration, not just for business, but for driving real, meaningful change in our communities. And there's no one better to guide us than today's guest, Helen Denny. Helen is the CEO of the Melting Pot, Scotland's Centre for Social Innovation, based in Edinburgh. The Melting Pot is more than just a co-working space. It's a living, breathing community where purpose-led people come together to spark ideas, build ventures, and create change that lasts. With a background spanning leadership, enterprise, and community development, Helen brings a wealth of expertise to the world of social innovation. She's passionate about helping individuals and organizations turn good ideas into action, whether that's through collaborative working, social enterprise, or sustainable innovation models. Under Helen's leadership, the Melting Pot continues to support change makers who are making Scotland and the world a better place. In this episode, we're talking about why collaboration matters now more than ever, how social innovation is shaping the future of work, and what we can all learn from purpose-led spaces like the Melting Pot. So let's dive in. Hi, Helen. How are you today?
Very well. Thanks for having me. So nice.
I know it's nice to see you today. And what I like to start off any Digital Dominators recording is just, even though I've read your bio, now it's your time to tell us how you got to where you are with the Melting Pot. Give us a little bit of your bio into the Melting Pot and what the Melting Pot is.
Great. Yeah. Where to start? Yeah, I suppose in terms of where I've come from, I think I always start with this because many moons ago I started out as a youth worker on the streets of Liverpool, working with young people to help them in their personal development. But actually through that work, I was really embedded in communities and working with a whole range of communities, some very deprived areas, but really found that common thread in terms of that work, in terms of investing and supporting people and taking them from where they were to help them kind of grow and develop and make changes in their lives. And I think it was that got me into social innovation, into working with community, but also really seeing the power of community and collaboration over the years. I've had a kind of varied career, if you like. I've done from youth work to international development to running my own business for 10 years, which was in the kind of changing world of workspace. And that was particularly in the run up to the pandemic and beyond, where I was supporting teams and individuals to navigate the not 9 to 5, whether that was remote working, flexible working, hybrid working. And in part of that journey, I relocated from, at that time, London to Edinburgh. And I found the Melting Pot. So as I became a member, I wanted somewhere to work from, to connect with the community, to make some, local connections in that city, And I just really felt like it was a home from home. And over time started doing some consultancy work with them, kind of got pulled into what they were trying to do as a social business here in Edinburgh and beyond. And then 3 years ago, I took on the chief exec role. So I had to make a bit of a decision from giving up my own business to stepping into someone else's, essentially. And that's sort of how I ended up there today. So quite an interesting, but yeah, I suppose that background's always been about community, making social impact happen in whatever role I've been in. And that all kind of came together in the melting pot, because it is about that flexible world of work, but it's also around change makers, purpose driven businesses, and creating impact across Scotland. So that's been, yeah, nice to kind of see how all the different elements of my journey have led me to where I am today.
I love that how no matter how many times I ask this question, it's the journey of what people have done. And it doesn't matter that it's if it is in the same industry or not, or if it's the same, or if it's not the same, because it's the skills that you've developed in your life, in your work, in your whatever happened in your journey that brings you to where you are right now. So making that change from business owner to business leader
Mm-hmm.
in the melting pot. Talk to me a little bit about that. How was that a big kind of change
It was
for
quite
you?
a big change.
Yeah.
You'll know this as a business owner. You have a
Uh-huh.
lot of autonomy, a lot of flexibility, and obviously as a CEO you do still. But yeah, I suppose I've been running my own business for 10 years. I've taken it from literally an idea. I thought a good idea, and managed to make it work over 10 years. Pandemic hit, and I think it was probably the starting point of me going, oh, do I still want to be running my own business, which in some ways felt quite isolating. I used freelancers when I needed them, but it was still really me doing pretty much everything. And that's can be knackering. And at the same time, the melting pot that I was still a member of and did some consultancy work with, they were going through a transition, moving to a bigger space in Edinburgh. The founder at the time was looking to step back. So I think there was a bit of a sort of a point where it's like, what's next for me? And I'm always up for a challenge and a new direction. I felt like I'd ticked the run a business bit off, and sort of could see the alignment with that role at the melting pot. So decided to take the leap into the CEO role when it was offered to me. I don't know if I would have taken it in many places, but for me, the melting pot really rang true to my values. It was a lot of alignment with some of the previous work I'd done in different ways, whether it's through my own business or that kind of historical piece. And I think more broadly, I could see the potential of the organization, but kind of didn't necessarily feel like it was achieving it. And so to have that bit of a challenge of going in and working with the team and the board to really think, okay, what could we become with a bit of a clearer strategy, a sense of sort of vision and direction. And actually that's been, it's not been easy over the last 3 years, but it's definitely been some really significant movements and moments where we've changed and grown, and we're definitely in that scaling stage as a business now. What's really nice, having run my own business and then stepping into a CEO role, is suddenly having people around you to talk to help you do things, and you're not completely, I suppose you do feel responsibility as a CEO, but I've also got a board now that I'm accountable to. I've got that wider network of support, and that has definitely relieved some of that pressure you feel when you're running your own business, versus absolutely have a sense of responsibility and want to make the melting pot the best it can be. But I know it's not just on me anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
on the whole team and the board, and our members also contribute, through how they engage with us as well. So I think, it's definitely been interesting journey, but one that I think was the right decision for me at that time.
Mm.
And I still don't like being told what to do, so it's good being chief exec. So I've
It's
got
easier being chief exec then, isn't it? When we've because generally most business owners are in that
yeah.
they're in business because of that.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, that is a big change, right? So that's
Mm.
dealing with like the ambiguity of it, of moving from you're your own boss to being a boss of other people. But that's really kind of leadership in itself though, isn't it, as well? It's a different type of leadership. It's leadership of a company that meets a common goal. Again, here's the leadership of a company that's got a common goal, but for the people that are all going for the common goal as well, that's part of it too. Interesting as well, post-COVID, so 3 years, this post-COVID turbulent time, changing times, but opportunity for change, opportunity for development, opportunity for growth, which is a lot kind of that innovative piece there as well. But before we go into innovation, tell people what is the melting pot. Give a little bit more history around what is the melting pot, what does it do, how does it help people, what can people gain from the melting pot without it being like a pitch or a job interview? Tell us a little bit more about the melting pot.
Yeah, so it's a great question because it depends who you are, because you can interact with the melting pot in so many different ways. But I suppose without going into the full history, it was set up in 2007. The founder who set it up wanted to create a community, a place in Edinburgh where people could come together, work, collaborate, and that kind of co-working model that many of us will now be familiar with. It was one of the first at the time in Europe, but deeper than that, there was a vision around it being this centre for social innovation. What does social innovation even mean?
That was my next question. So, what does social innovation mean to people? Because they must be going, right, innovation, that's about maybe coming up with a new idea or developing something new. What is social innovation? Is that like social media, or is it like going and chatting to people? What does it mean?
Yeah, so it's a great question because people are like, what does social innovation mean all the time? So I would say it's exactly what you've just said: innovation, new ideas, new approaches, new ways of doing things. The social bit just relates to where it's done and how that's done. So what it's talking around is, how do we innovate to tackle some of those really complex challenges in the world? So those environmental problems, those social problems that exist in our communities globally, whether it's poverty to climate change. So the social bit is coming at and looking at those problems in a different way and saying, actually, the top down throwing money or going in and solving the kind of the symptoms is not enough. We have to go before that, is looking at the prevention. What can we do that's innovative and different and creative to really try and tackle that change, and make the world a better place. So it is all around improving the planet and people, and making that positive impact. And that's a simplified version. People do PhDs in social innovation, but on a simple level, we talk around it in that kind of making a positive change for people and planet. But through that, what it's about is that collaborative. It's really collaborative. It's about working across sectors, bringing different sectors together to look at those problems and work together to make that change happen. It's open source, which is a little bit different in this world. Instead of holding on to our solutions, actually it's around saying, well, we did this worked, take it and try it in your own communities. And there's other things that feed into that, but it's broadly around actually coming at those challenges we all face in the world in a different way. And so when you look back at the melting pot, it called itself this Centre for Social Innovation back in 2007, but really at that time and for the next 10 years or so, it was more of a space for people to come and just collaborate, connect and work. We probably in the last few years have shifted more into really trying to focus in on what does it actually mean to be a centre for social innovation. So your previous question was around how can people engage with us, and what we talk around is we work with people at every stage of their journey. So right from the beginning, so a solo entrepreneur, you'll remember these days, Sooz, where you go, I've got this idea, it's a little bit crazy. How do I make it work? So that's where people can interact with us via our incubator program. And it can literally be someone who says, I care about homelessness in my city. I feel like we could try this, and that might help tackle an element of that problem. So they can apply and come on our incubator, and we work with them as part of a cohort over 6 months to help them develop that idea, to see whether it could become a social business, social enterprise project to make that change. But then we work with people at the next stage, and that's where they come in and use our physical space. And we very much call it a collaborative hub in the heart of Edinburgh. And then we're part of a wider network of hubs across Scotland, which operate in a similar way. And it's where you can come, you can work, but when you walk in the door, everyone in that room, well, 92% on our last piece of work that we did, are in some way working in social innovation. So they're all trying to do something positive for people and planet. And that in itself creates a real powerful space, because you're suddenly in a room full of people that you're like, this is my tribe. They get what I'm trying to do, and you can learn and you can connect. You can make collaborations happen over a members' lunch. People chat and they go, oh, we can see how we can work together. We have an events program around that as well. So the public, anyone who's interested, can come in and tap into that and meet our members and the amazing work they're doing. You know, we've got people working with asylum seekers right through to people who are doing some really innovative things in the climate change space. So it's really varied and diverse in terms of our membership. And then the third bit of our business is now really around, once you've gone from develop my good idea, maybe come back and use your shared collaborative space, made some great connections. But some of those businesses, they grow and they scale, they build their own teams, they need to move on and find their own spaces to work from. And at that point, they often stay connected with us, and then they can tap back into our consultancy at a later stage. So anyone who's scaled a business will know that comes with its own challenges as well. So our consultancy uses some of our innovation tools, uses our network of consultants from across Scotland to really tackle some of those people, place and productivity problems that come as we're scaling businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And what's nice about the consultancy, because we are a social enterprise, is that any profits from that get reinvested back in to help our
Mm-hmm.
wider network of partners across Scotland who are working in quite small rural coastal towns, but more broadly also helps our innovators right at the beginning of their journey who can't necessarily afford to pay for a place on an incubator program. Those profits, as we grow that arm of the business, will enable them to start their journey. And it's a way for other companies then to give back as they've grown. So it's quite a varied way of getting involved, but it's, yeah.
Yeah. I like, from what I got, the one word that sums that up really is like an ecosystem that you've got of support for people that are wanting to make an impact in the world. And my question, I've got multiple from what you said there, but one that's just at top of mind is, do you feel that there's a difference? So you mentioned that it's cross sector, so public, private, and social and third sector. Do you find that having the melting pot just being people that are there for social impact and social change is different than if you were in a space that was across all areas? Like, so I know very much, just as an example, like going to a networking event that's got mixed has a very different type of networking event than it is purely going to one that's for the third sector, or purely one that's for private sector, or purely one that's for public sector. They're very different networks. So having a space with all of those together, how is that different?
Well, it's a good question, and it's like I could probably talk for 2 hours about this. But what's really interesting is, I think, if you go, so going back to your first point, when you go to those events where it's all about one sector, so whether it's a tech sector, social enterprise, charity, finance, whatever it is, you go in the room and you kind of know what to expect, don't you? If you work in that sector, you'll be like, okay, it'll be this demographic of people. We'll probably have a chat about this. Maybe there'll be a few people that I've not met before, but there'll be definitely, if you go regularly, some familiar faces. And that in itself is lovely. But it's very much, for a lot of us, that'll be our comfort zone of, okay, it's just a nice safe space because I kind of know what to expect. What we found with this cross-sector approach, which links into one of our networking events, which is very cross-sector, it actually creates a space where people have to step out of their silos, and they're challenged a little bit to go, okay, I can't connect on what I do for a living. I actually might have to talk and then get to know the person. So that human to human connection, but through that kind of human to human connection, which is much more meaningful, it's amazing. Then when people start to notice we've still got alignment, we've still got similarities, we still care about the same, thing, whether that's just we want the world to be a better place. And then they start to go and move into that innovative space where you go, okay, well, actually, I can see how tech, working with a small grassroots charity in this community, if we work together, we can actually make a bigger impact, because those different sectors have solutions, and it's how do you bring them into that kind of space so they all can learn from each other. We've learned so much from other sectors over the years, even though we sit in social enterprise as a business, but we're cross sector. It's quite interesting then. So I go to all sorts of events, and actually I've learned more about running a business, but also brought ideas back that I can share with the team, with the members. And I think we see the same with our community, and more broadly, it's now filtered into how we operate our events. So we run an event series called Bridging Communities. We were actually in Glasgow last week with the full day, and there was 130 people in the room. And one of the speakers in advance said to me, "Well, who's the audience?" And I was like, "Everyone." And he's like, "Oh, right, okay." And he did a great job, a brilliant speaker. But what was interesting is actually that's really unusual to be in a space where it's not just finance, it's not just tech, it's not just social enterprise, it's everyone. But the feedback from that is people feel, because we take away job titles, we take away what you do for a living, we take away the go and find somebody who's in a similar industry from you, and instead we challenge people to connect on a human level with their stories, being a bit more vulnerable. But by the end of the day, people had left with tangible commitments to action of things that they could do within their own sphere of influence. They were inspired by 5 very different speakers, as well as some, facilitated breakouts. And I think there's something really powerful around pushing people out of that comfort zone into that more challenging space where it's like, oh, but actually once you're in it, you can really create a safe space for people to connect and remember that we're all, whatever we do, we can always find that kind of thread and common values with just a little bit of work.
As soon as we let those barriers down, isn't it? It's the real authentic self that comes through. And I love that you're providing that space for it, because as a business owner, but as an individual that even works for a company, you're always in a presentation mode. You're always in a way of either presenting yourself in a way, or the company in a way, or the team in a way. You're always in presentation mode. So when you create a space that you remove those, okay, what's your job title? What do you do? Where do you work? It is, who are you? That's a really encouraging and I like to say empathetic space. And at Technology Coaching, we teach the design thinking method for innovation. And the second step of that is empathy. And a lot of that, of what I got from what you were saying there, is really putting empathy at the heart of the conversations that you're having, the problems that you're solving, who is it that you're helping, and the why, and what's the solution that we're going to solve for them. And knowledge sharing being a huge part of what you do too, and creating that space across sectors. I think this is where progress happens, when we keep things to ourselves and we don't knowledge share. And I love that the melting pot is doing that so well. And there's a lot for people to learn in business.
And it's really interesting. I mean, I think people are scared. I mean, historically, I remember a conversation back in my youth work days where we were running, quite a successful youth project in a very deprived area in Liverpool. And I said to my colleague, well, these guys are just down the road. Why don't we share what we're doing? And then she was like, no, because they'll just steal our ideas. And I was like, well, does that matter? To me, it didn't matter, because I was like, well, if it's about the people you're there to serve, then they'll have a greater impact if we share that knowledge. And I think that's always stayed with me, that the more we can share our knowledge, it doesn't, people, maybe somebody steals your ideas. I don't know. I'm not talking around something that you've patented, but I think that just approaching it in a different way with that transparency, that openness, I think it does come back around, and people do grow and they go, okay, actually I can learn, and this is really important. So I think it's so critical to that social innovation space, that being transparent, being open source, being collaborative, and having to let go of that fear a little bit of, I'm just going to keep it for myself. It's like, actually, what's the worst that'll happen? 9 times out of 10, people don't have the energy or the time to steal your ideas because they're busy with their own things. So it's actually, how do we just create that space where you feel able to get out and just be a bit more open and genuine.
That's where creativity sits as well as part of that. And I mean, with myself having a background in music, it was about being a team member.
Yeah.
in a space, all using the same 13 notes to create something, either that's been written by somebody else, which is based upon something else, but there's only 13 notes in that scale, right? 13. And they're all, there's so many different types of music and sound and rhythm. And creativity is based within that space of working together and teamwork, communication, collaboration. And when you become a business owner or if you've got a bright idea, whether you're in any sector, you want to keep that to yourself and you want to see it
Yeah.
to work. So you've got this challenge of like supporting people that are wanting to make a huge impact in the world, right? But they don't want to, it's theirs, it's their little baby that they've created, they've thought up, and they know it will provide a solution. So there's a mindset shift, right? So how do you support people with wanting to make innovative change? Is mindset a huge part of that as well?
Yeah, I think it is, and we might not use that language per se, but I think you mentioned design thinking before, and when we run the incubator program, we very much embed it on that design thinking methodology and getting people to really sort of think around from that empathy piece of like who are we trying to support and understand that, but we also challenge them even through that program to step out of their silos, because we can talk to our friends and they'll go, great idea, absolutely should do that, but we're like, well, is that enough? And so there's a testing process and getting out and about and talking to people that you wouldn't normally interact with. But we, through everything we do, and we were talking about this yesterday as a team, actually, there's some key principles. And one of them actually is around creating space. So as we have a physical space and we're part of a wider network of spaces across Scotland, we also create space for people in terms of headspace. And I think it is that mindset of, and then there's some facilitated approaches within that space, whether it's through one of our events, through our incubator, through our membership, through our consultancy, we create space and then we listen and we try and work together with those people at whichever way they're interacting with us to go, okay, what's the problem you're trying to solve and how do we work together to solve that? And not us trying to tell them the answers from is that very much actually let's solve it together, because often people affected by a problem, whether it's a challenge in your business through to an issue in your community, or direct lived experience, some of the answers within. And it's the same for us as individuals, isn't it? When we're trying to tackle, should I take this job or move here or whatever it is, we ask all our friends for advice, but then we ignore that advice until we've figured it out ourselves. And often that comes back to having the space and time to reflect and go, okay, well, what's right for me? Trusting my gut a little bit as well. So I've gone off on a wee bit of a tangent there, but I think the bit for me is that then the mindset and that comes into creating space for people. And I think that's something that Mountain Pot does really well, is create space, whether it's through our events, through the physical space, or through the different programs we offer. And by having skilled facilitators in those spaces, whether it's our community hosts or the facilitators running the incubator program, what you're doing is getting them to ask some of those challenging questions for people to go away, reflect and delve into. And then we actually bring in creativity. So we use a bit of Lego, love a bit of Lego. We had creatives at the event last week because actually we really value that space of creativity, gets us into a different part of our brain, which you'll know. And often, well, for some people, they've never really engaged that bit of their brain. They're like, I'm very much left or right brained. And actually that bringing people to connect in with that creativity can really help you shift and change perspective and see things differently. And it was quite I'll give an example. Last week at lunchtime, we had somebody doing creative writing at the conference, and for people just to reflect on what they've been hearing. And somebody sat down thinking it was just where they could eat their lunch, and I was like, oh great, you're going to do the creative writing space. And he was a bit like, oh, anyway, he did it, and I spoke to him a couple of days later and he said actually it was brilliant. He said suddenly I was using a different bit of my brain, and it was really powerful what he wrote, because it tied into an action he needed to take, but it was only by sitting and being in that space. So I think there's a real power in embracing creativity. It doesn't mean you have to be creative, but embracing the space to be use creativity tools. Does that make sense?
100% makes sense to me, because that's what I like to
Yeah.
teach as well, is that we learn through play, right?
Yeah.
So very much as adults, that doesn't change from when we were a child. Just because we immediately turn an age, that doesn't change, right? So when we're in a space of play, and that is using our hands, right? Using all of our physical senses and non-physical senses to interact in some sort of way, we're able to empathize, we're able to connect, we're able to communicate, we're able to question differently because we're able to see things differently. So very much what great feedback that is to get from somebody that's just wanting to sit and have their lunch, to go, actually,
Yeah, gonna do
this
the writing.
this helped me because I was using a different part of my brain. And it is that only comes through collaborative spaces and that kind of collaborative approach and that mindset shift, which you mentioned about
Yeah.
as well. So when it comes to people that are wanting to do more meaningful work, right? So maybe they are either in a job or they're starting up their company is already maybe existing, it doesn't matter where they are, but they've got a pull to do something that's going to make an impact. What would you say to them to kind of get started with that? How does that work in your eyes?
Oh, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I always say just take the leap. So, but that's maybe more reflective of who I am as a person. But I think when people have that pull to do something that's more meaningful or create more of a positive impact, and we've seen people over the years, some that have always worked in a space where it's been about impact, social impact, and for others who've come into it later, they've changed career and gone, actually, I don't want to work in this sector or space anymore, I want to do something different. I think at the heart of it is we often talk around actually taking small steps, but within your sphere of influence or what feels comfortable, that 15% kind of concept. So, because if you go, I'm going to quit my job and set up a business, that feels massive. Whereas if you say, I feel like I want to do something different, but I'm not sure what, but there's a workshop where I could just go for a couple of hours and explore that. That feels a bit safer for people. We for us, we have entry points that are quite safe, if you like. It could be initially an event, there might be a workshop, and there might be, okay, actually, I'll join this collaborative hub and work from this space. And then I might progress into moving down to making that leap to set up a social business. Some people are programmed in different ways. We're all programmed in different ways, but I think some people will just take the leap and go, I know this is a good idea and I'm going to do it. But others, they just need that time and community. And I think what's key for what I've learned over the years is that you need a network of people around you who are really your cheerleaders, but also your critical friends who challenge you and say, okay, can you think about it in a different way? And I think if you've got that around you, which we try and embed for everything we do, I think it really helps people to feel able to take the leap into that space. So I suppose for anyone who's thinking around it, who's got an idea and they're like, I'm not really sure if it's a good idea or not. My experience, 9 times out of 10, it is a good idea. It's probably not new or original because somebody's already thought of it. But that's okay. You know, what can we learn from those people? But is actually go and find your tribe and the people around you that can help you, who both challenge you and support you and give you the space and time to work it through and think around what could this mean if I made this a reality in my world.
Does technology help to play a part in bringing these kind of spaces and opportunities together? How does tech play a role with what you're doing in the Melting
Yeah,
Pot?
I think it's a really good question. So I think tech's really important actually in, over the years, probably back in the day, we probably used very little before my time. But I think with technology now, what we are able to do is offer platforms for people to engage and talk with each other on those platforms. So you've got your kind of physical and online community. I think that's really helpful. I think technology, especially what we've seen in terms of development over the last few years, is it's enabling people to get there, to access opportunities in different localities. So that's been a real spike in where you can be like, well, I've been in, I don't know, in the Highlands or the islands where there's maybe less in-person opportunities, but I can use technology to tap into programs and initiatives that are happening to help me explore ideas or connect with my community. I also think things like AI, we've done a piece recently around AI and social innovation, and obviously it's not my expertise by any stretch, but we brought in partners who are working in that space. And I think that's been really interesting, thinking around how tools like AI and others, tech tools, can really enable you to make a greater impact, speed up the process of whatever the work is you're doing, potentially make work, what's the right language there, but making, streamlining some of our processes, etc. So yeah, I think you can't say I don't use tech anymore. Is so critical to everything we do, and we use it in lots of different ways. We're embedding some AI tools in our own business to help with think processes. We obviously have tech platforms and things to support, and we connect in with the tech sector a fair amount as well, because you can learn so much from how they work. So yeah, I think it's absolutely critical in terms
I
of
think especially with the melting pot being a place for sectors to come together and to knowledge share, it seems to me that technology would play an essential role in part of that,
yeah
with connecting people.
yeah
Um, have you done anything to facilitate that? How do you do it at the melting pot?
So one of the platforms we're linked into at the Melting Pot, which we link up with all of our events and things, is Community Lab. So relatively new platform, but trying to create a space for community, but online, and who want to come together. So we have that as a simple sort of tool that we share, a platform that we share for any of our events. We'll link it in with our incubator program so they can have their own space on that. So I think that's one example of how you can use technology and just embed it in what you're doing. We've got an internal platform as well, but that's less exciting to talk about. Although,
Yeah.
but that, it's all singing or dancing, does everything we need it to do, from that whole customer journey end to end, and from that initial kind of point of contact right through to when they become a client or customer in some way. We use a platform that helps us navigate that process. So, but I think the community bit for me, like Community Lab, I know that there is other platforms out there that just really help in terms of creating spaces for people to connect and talk
Yeah,
online
there's
and
tons of tools out there that you
yeah.
can use, and it's about the business finding the right one that works for their business and their tech stack and everything that they've got set up. And do you find that there's a difference between the online community and the way that you have to manage and support that online community, or is it kind of self
I think
supporting in some sort of way than
I
it would be in person? What
yeah.
I'm trying to get is that difference between how you work between the two communities.
Yeah, so I think there is a difference. And so all of the people who connect with us online have probably interacted with us in person at some point, whether it's through one of our incubator programs, through an event, or they're a member. So there is a relationship in some way. And then they go, okay, actually, I want to continue this relationship online because I live in the Highlands, so I
Yeah.
can't come into your space. So I think there's a, I suppose, for curating the online community, that it is more work. And I think for some people, they like to engage with it, but I don't know about you probably have a million different platforms that you're engaging with. So it's around actually, how do you create a meaningful online space that people feel like it's really adding value, and not just another notification that's like, I'm going to just turn them off and ignore them. So we try and use it, but balanced with that in-person piece. And I think that's partly, I suppose, part of our DNA and what we're about, but recognize that you need both. But yeah, we do have to curate it. So we have to ask questions, we have to manage so we're not bombarding people. And then some of the groups within that platform will kind of then self-manage. And that's great. That's kind of what you want. And
Hmm.
then with some of the others, we will obviously be more involved because it will depend how it's related to our wider work. So, yeah, there's definitely, but I suppose, well, it goes back to what I said before, I think, but there's a common thread that curate or facilitate whatever the languages you use is the key across it, whether it's in person or online.
Yeah.
You need to curate it and facilitate it, and not just go, here's a platform,
Hmm.
back on.
I think having the people understand what the purpose of that community is, and not to treat it just like they would a social media platform, and what is the benefit for them to integrate into that community, in that online community, I should say, rather than just the in person.
Yeah.
I seem to think that maybe an in person community is something that you can drop in and out of whenever you want, and you have time and capacity to meet that person and or the people within that community, because you're in there in person. When it comes to online, you can dip in and out in the same way, but you don't always need to engage.
Yeah.
You don't always need to show up, say hello. You can stalk it or almost like
Early
watch.
stalker. So we're all in those Facebook groups where we just stalk. I'm showing my age now with the
Yeah,
Facebook
but
group.
LinkedIn's like that as well, though. We know that LinkedIn's a stalking platform for people. It sounds rude to using it that language, but it's not. Most people use the platform to watch rather than to post. And so it's about changing the mindset around a community is a different platform than a social platform, whether you're in a group on a social platform or not. But it's a community, if you and your business is a space that's purely for those people,
Yeah.
based around that business,
Yeah.
and the interactions you have control over it from a business point of view. And I'm having these conversations at the moment, and so I'm going to ask you this as well. So I believe that the biggest assets that companies will have in the future is the data that they hold.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the internal data of a company, not the data that we share with other companies to utilize their product or service, if that makes sense. So giving it to a tool that's holding all that data that we have no control over. Social media being one of them, for example. So what are your thoughts around data? And especially when it comes to what you're doing in the melting pot, but then how does it impact the business in a way, and how are you using it to help the business grow? Lots of questions in that one question there.
Yeah. It's like, oh, there's loads
Talk
of
to me about
questions.
data. Tell me, what does data mean to you?
I don't know. I think, yeah, so you're saying about the data we hold, you talking, yeah. I think data is really important. So it goes, I guess for me, what's really interesting with data is if you think about it from a human level, like you've just described, we all hold data, don't we? We learn how to walk, hopefully, potentially we learn how to walk, we learn how to talk, etc., as we grow up. That's all data that's in us. It's the same when you're in a business or part of a team or part of a community, or you process that data around whether you like the space, what's working about the space. When you're in a team, as you grow a business or lead a business, you have data around how you believe it best runs, and then how do you share that knowledge and get it out so that you have a succession plan and leave at some point. So I think it is really critical, data, in terms of how embedded it is within us, and then it's around how do we do that knowledge sharing piece with data, but in a way that's not selling state secrets or whatever. Like, it's how do we get that data out that we all hold, that creates the USP or the unique selling points of the different businesses and spaces that we're operating in. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think it's a really interesting thing to think about for people running businesses
Mm.
or in a business is,
I'm sure that you must have to collect data to feed back in some
yeah,
sort of way as well, right? So
yeah,
you must be having to collect information about the amount of people that are coming in, the amount of people that are booking, or the amount of people going through the program, the results of that. And then you're having to feed that back. And I suppose, does that support the ecosystem in a way as well, working with the data like
yeah,
that?
yeah, because I think you can look at data. So this is a very philosophical question for me, so sorry. I'm like, you can look at data in two ways. You've got the hard data of who's coming in the space or who's taking part in our program, who's our consultancy clients. Okay, what do they need? What's the demographic? What's the kind of key deliverables, the outcomes? What we do some feedback, we collate that data, we turn it into a nice impact report, we feed that and we shout about it. It feeds into the wider ecosystem. And as I said, because we try to be open source, we'll share that through reports and other things on our website. And I think what's interesting though then is also the data we hold, and how do you get that data back out into businesses, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier around, we often hold the knowledge within instead of sharing it, and that's data. And I definitely experienced that coming into a business where the founder had held a lot of data of how it should work. And it's like, actually, how do we get that out that you can
Yeah.
exit and the business will continue without you. So I think there's two elements to it, isn't there? But it's so critical, as you say, to develop an ecosystem for people to learn and recreate and model, and learn from what you've done, and your wins and your failures, and build on that within, and make it right for their own communities and own businesses as well.
If the knowledge sharing doesn't happen, then we can't see change as quickly or development as quickly.
Yeah.
There's always this sense of what works, keep doing. What doesn't
Yes.
work, change, right?
Yeah.
But if we learn from other people's experiences, why not? Why not do that? Why not implement that as a solution?
Yeah.
Do you think AI will have a part to play in that, where it's learning solutions from people and the information that it's sharing, that's being shared? Do you think it will help to provide better solutions quicker?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've been using AI for the last couple of years. Just, I'm sure other people have, like, in very simple ways. It's therefore now learning my tone and what I want, and I would never put out a post or a blog that's completely written by AI, because I think you have to still have the human in it. But it's amazing how quickly, when you use a tool a lot, how it kind of learns your. So I think AI could play a huge part in the years to come, and I think there'll be a piece. I mean, there's always a piece around the ethics of it and what's being done to protect people's data at the same time. People will have noticed on Meta platform where there's now the little, I'm like, don't press that button, because who
It's
knows
right
what
where your thumb should be, isn't it?
going to slip, and then they're going to have all my data, and apparently they won't, but it's like, really? So I guess it's that ethical consideration around how do you use AI. But I think really important it is absolutely the future of work. It's going to be embedded in what we do, and I think some sectors are quicker and up to speed in how they use it. I think it's a little bit slower in other sectors, and people are afraid of it. But I think if you can do your research and see how it fits, I think it can really benefit. And I see it, small organizations, small businesses, tiny charities could really benefit from some AI tools. There's lots of free or relatively cheap ones that you suddenly could make a huge difference to your workload. So
Yeah, I find that the mindset shift is towards implementing more tools, especially around AI and automation and data. Those kind of three which feel hardcore for third sector, but they're really not. And it's actually working with those tools to start off with will help their processes faster, quicker, more cost effective, using budgets effectively, all of that stuff as part of it. So yeah, interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with AI and social impact in the future that way. And there is a lot around the ethical, and I suppose this was the same even when it came to data analytics in 2018 as well. Again, with change, there's always challenges, right? But it's always change for growth or change for good. We're thinking about tech for good here, and not tech for bad in some sort of
absolutely.
way.
Yeah. I mean, you've
Hmm.
got your early adopters, haven't you? And then you've got your people further along on that innovation or that diffusion curve. And I think it's really interesting, because there will be the people who are like, we're holding out. Like my mum, she only got a smartphone in the pandemic because we brought her
Yeah,
extra this year. So, and it's like there's always going to be that spectrum. I'd say we
that's
sit
right.
in the earlier stage of, like, actually let's embrace this, because I think it can be used in a way that's for good and can make a
Yeah,
huge impact.
I think so as well. And so, what do you think then the future of work is going to be like over the next, let's say, 5 years, because of AI, because of the implementation, because of all of these tools that are kind of defaultly going to be available for people to use? They're built into the products that they're using on a day by day basis. So whether that's AI or other, what is the world of work looking like for you? Whether that's you're an employee, an employer, if you're setting up a social enterprise, what does that look like just now for you?
It's a good question. I like this one. The world of work in 5 years, I think, will look. I don't think it's going to look significantly different to where we're at, but I think we'll see continuing trends on things that
Well,
have
look, we've
already.
seen the last 5 years, right? People have moved
Yeah,
into hybrid work. That's
yeah,
massively changed the impact. So
yeah.
5 years' time, we're going to see it change even further. No, right?
Yeah, so I obviously ran a business called Not 9 to 5 pre-pandemic and towards the end of the pandemic.
I
And
didn't know that.
no one knew what I did until the pandemic hit. And then they were like,
Okay.
oh, now we get it. So there was
Yeah.
obviously a forced move to remote working during the pandemic. You know, for lots of businesses, there was no choice. You had to leave the
Yeah.
office, work from home. But that obviously then increased the number of people who now work flexibly or from a hybrid space. And flexibility works who are a business in that space. They've done some amazing reports and research, particularly in Scotland, about it. And I think what's interesting is that that trend will continue. So we at the Melting Pot, we operate a blended model for our staff team. So we're flexible, we're hybrid, but we also use freelancers to supplement. And so as a small business where I can't keep bringing in employees, what I can do is bring in freelancers. And you're seeing a trend in more people choosing a freelance lifestyle. So I think
Yeah.
that's going to continue. So that kind of opportunity then to dip in and out of different projects and different businesses. So I think that's going to definitely be a trend that you'll see in the workplace, that continued growth with flexible hybrid working, but more importantly, blended teams. I think you're going to see more and more technology, which you will know, absolutely coming in and making, I believe, work easier for people and processes quicker and like giving you them more time back. And we're all time poor. So actually
Yeah.
having using tools that enable you to have a better work-life balance, let's embrace it. For me, I think that's going to be really key, and I think you'll see much more of that over the next 5 years. The other thing that I think is really interesting, again, I could do another podcast about this, but is that I think you're going to see there's a generation of people now who are choosing purpose in their work. So they're not choosing the big corporates. There's always some that will go that route, but they're choosing businesses, B Corps, social enterprises, organizations that care about people and planet. And that really matters to the generation coming into work at the moment. It's around purpose, it's around flex. And I think you're just going to see more and more of that. It also, another thing is like, I think you're going to start to see people, as there's all these changes going on around, you know, choosing purpose, getting the flex, having the tech. I think you're also going to see people choosing opportune work that is around supporting local more. I think there's a growing trend in Scotland, maybe not wider, I don't know, but that actually it matters about where we live and the communities we live in. And I think you're already seeing murmurings of that in different places. And so those micro enterprises, those smaller enterprises that can make a real difference economically within those communities, I think you'll start to see a rise in that space as well.
That's amazing. We've seen change in communities because of COVID, and we've seen town centres change. We've seen cities change because of the hybrid working, less obviously people coming into cities, even shop fronts leaving, retail changing, and we have to innovate the way that we think
Yeah.
about how we use these spaces, right? So town
Yeah.
centres need to become other things. And let's hope that within the next 5 years, there's people coming to the melting pot to come up with innovative solutions for
There's already
these.
one there. There's already one there. There's an amazing piece of, I don't know, we're running out of time, but there was an amazing piece of research during the pandemic by the Autonomy Institute. And they looked at how you could redesign your high streets
Uh-huh.
and repurpose big empty spaces into have a shared workspace, but your creche, your doctors, your dentist is all there, everything you need so families and parents can come in. So at the moment, the way our cities are designed, it doesn't suit
No.
certain demographics within our society. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that shift is starting to come, and we'll see that more in the world of work as well. That understanding around inclusion and how do we create workplaces that fit for people, not the other way around. So
Yeah, which has always been we have to accommodate our lives around work, where now we can see that they can work hand in hand and have that balance together. That sounds like a wonderful future and one that I want
yes,
to be in anyway, doesn't it, Helen?
exactly. We can create our own future. It's fine. So
We can, we can.
yeah.
I can't believe this is us almost finishing up, but I like to ask what are your three biggest tips to give to people to think about being collaborative, being innovative? What was going to fuel that social innovation and lasting change? What can you share with people as we finish up today?
Yeah, so I've probably said it throughout, but I think for me, well, one tip is around trust your gut and let go of the fear instead of holding on to something. See what happens when you share it with somebody, whether that's somebody in a totally different sector. So if you've got that, like, oh, I want to try this idea, talk to somebody that you would never usually share that with. Because I think that's where collaboration and growth comes. So I think there's something around just give it a go. Try and change that, stepping out of your silos. I think the other bit is probably that, step out of your silos, find those opportunities in the places you live where you challenge yourself and others to go and step into a different space from the one you're normally in, because that's where I think the knowledge exchange happens. It's where you learn the most, but it's where innovation happens. And I think we probably touched on this about being creative, and it's not around feeling that you're, but I think creativity is so integral to social innovation, to innovation generally. It's around when was the last time you played or drew something or doodled or wrote or, had to strum on a guitar, whatever it looks like. Even if you're rubbish at it doesn't matter. Go and, try and find that creative side, because I think it's amazing what can come, and how can you embed that in some of your work practices as well. We use Lego pretty much every strategy day, and it's great. Everyone loves it. It's like using your hands.
Yeah.
There's loads of the things I could say, but I think it's that you're trying to step out of silos, share those ideas that are there with somebody and get some feedback, and not your friends.
Not your friends, not your family, change your network.
Yeah. And embrace a bit of creativity in your life. Yeah. And I think those are the things that, can help in terms of making a change for yourself, but maybe for others as well along the way. And what's the actions you can take within your own sphere of influence? If you care about the people and you care about the planet, it's not around having to necessarily set up a business, but what's the micro actions? We talk around the baby steps, the micro actions. Can you volunteer locally? Can you just do something that's within your own sphere of influence? Because I think it's that ripple effect that can make a huge difference.
I love that. Thank you so much, Helen, for joining me today. And for people that want to connect with Helen and find out more about the Melting Pot, if you head to themeltingpotedinburgh.org.uk, right down at the bottom on the footer, they've got a newsletter sign up. There you'll find out about any of the online spaces that Helen was talking about, the workshops that they run and the communities that they've got, the programmes also. If you're locally in Scotland, you can look at what's available across the events that they run, and also the incubator programs, but also their wider approach to how they're making an impact within social innovation and change. It's been an absolute honour and privilege to have you on today, Helen, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Just like with all of these, I could talk to you for another hour or two, but means that we might do a podcast again in the future. Right. But thank you so much for joining us today, Helen, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
That's it for this episode of Digital Dominators. If your brain's buzzing and you're ready to keep that digital energy going, come join us at technologycoaching.online. It's the community for small business owners who want to get visible, take action, and grow with the right support around them. Head to technologycoaching.online. I'd love to see you there. And until next time, keep showing up, tackling your tech, and dominating your digital world.